120 years are over. 7 days are over. The door is closed. Noah, his family, and the animals are sealed in the ark. Noah did not shut the door. God did. And that door is not going to open again until God opens it. Now the rain is falling. Not just falling, but coming down so hard and so fast that it floods the earth. And it's not just the sky. The ground has broken open too. All Noah and his family can do now is wait. They wait inside the ark while the water rises. They hear the rushing water outside. They feel the ark starting to sway underneath them. And in the middle of all of this, they thank God for keeping them safe. But what happens outside of the ark? What does the world look like now that the ground isn't dry anymore? Today we're going over Genesis chapter 7, verses 17 through 24. So grab a drink and a snack and let's get started. Welcome to another episode of Exploring the Bible. If you're new here, thank you for joining us. On this podcast, we explore the narratives of the Bible from Genesis all the way to Revelations. And we look at the lessons we can learn and the warnings we can heed. And most importantly, we see God's grace, love, and mercy running through every single one of these stories. And if you're a returning listener, thank you for coming back. I really do appreciate your support. It means a lot to me that you keep showing up week after week to walk through this with me. Today's verses is Genesis chapter 7, 17 through 24. I'm reading from the New Living Translation. For 40 days, the floodwaters grew deeper, covering the ground and lifting the boat high above the earth. The waters rose higher and higher above the ground. The boat floated safely on the surface. Finally, the water covered even the highest mountain on earth, raising more than 22 feet above the highest peak. And all the living things on earth died: birds, domestic animals, wild animals, small animals that scurry along the ground, and all the people. Everything that breathed and lived on dry land died. God wiped out every living thing on earth: people, livestock, small animals that scurry along the ground, the birds of the sky. All were destroyed. The only people who survived were Noah and those with him on the boat. And the flood waters covered the earth for 150 days. Now, instead of going verse by verse like we normally do, I want us to look at all 8 of these verses as one complete picture today. There's just something about this section that needs to be taken in all at once. But before we do that, I want to give you 3 numbers to think about: 33,500. 381, and 9. If you're sitting there wondering, what in the world do these numbers mean? I'll tell you. 33,500 feet in elevation is the tallest mountain in the world. 381 feet is the height of the tallest tree ever recorded. And 9 feet is about the height of the tallest person recorded in history. Now, why am I telling you all of this? To give you some perspective on these 8 verses we just read. These verses tell us that the flood waters rose so high that they covered the highest mountain by more than 20 feet over the top. Let that sink in for a second. I want us to imagine what the world must have looked like after 40 days and 40 nights of nonstop flooding. The tallest person who ever lived would have been underwater. The tallest tree that ever grew would have been underwater. And the tallest mountain on the face of the earth would have been completely underwater. All of it gone under the water. We also learned something small but important here. There is only one window on the ark, and it seems like it did not open for a long time. So Noah and his family did not actually know what it looked like on the outside. They couldn't see it for themselves, but we get to see it. The Bible paints a picture for us clearly about what is going on, even though Noah and his family could not see it. So let's do what we did back in season 1, when we went over the story of creation. Let's imagine we're floating in the air, looking down on what's happening. And what do we see? Water and the ark. That's it. That is all there is. Nothing else around. No trees, no grass, no people walking around, no animals grazing in the fields. None of that is left. All we see is the ark is about a football field and a half long, 4 stories tall, which is about the size of an apartment building, floating on top of the water. Everything else is dead. We watch the rain finally stop falling. We watch the water under the earth stop rising. And then we watch. We watch as the ark floats on top of the water, alone, for 150 days. Let's put 150 days into perspective. We can't just breeze past that number. Noah and his family have been on the ark for now a total of 197 days. Let's break that down. 7 days waiting for the flood to even begin, 40 days of the rain falling and the earth erupting with water, and now 150 days just floating on the top of the surface of the water. In our modern calendar, that's about 6.5 months. 6.5 months. Noah, his wife, his sons, and his daughters-in-law, and every single animal on that boat have been shut inside this ark for over half a year at this point. And they're still not done. We know from earlier in the story that there are stalls for the animals, storage for food, and 3 different levels inside the ark. It wasn't like they were all crammed into one tiny room. But I still have to wonder, what did the day-to-day life actually look like for this family? Were they starting to wonder when they would finally get off the boat? Were they marking days somehow, counting them off one by one? Or were they trying to forget? To forget what was happening outside the ark altogether, just to get through it? These are the questions we may never get the answers to. But honestly, I find myself wondering about them, because I wonder what I would do if I was in the same situation. There was only really one time in my life, and probably in yours, where we got a small taste of what Noah and his family was dealing with. And that was when the world shut down because of COVID-19. We were all in lockdown. We were told to stay in our homes and to not go near anyone who lived outside of our own house. And yes, I know, unlike Noah, if we needed groceries, we could still go to the store. As you remember, that came with its own strict rules we had to follow. But just like Noah, our whole world changed overnight. And honestly, some of us still do things differently today, 6 years later, that we would never have imagined doing before the pandemic hit. Some of us turned off the news completely because we just could not stand to hear one more depressing update. And some of us did the opposite. We wanted to watch everything to know exactly what was going on out there, no matter how hard it was to hear. And I wonder if it's the same with Noah and his family. Were some of them trying not to think about what was happening outside the ark at all? And were others wanting to know, wanting to understand the full weight of what was going on out there so they could be fully aware? But in the end, however each of them handled it, they trusted that God would take care of them and keep them safe. And he did. I want us to sit with something else in these verses for a second. Verse 21 tells us that every living thing on the face of the earth died. Birds, livestock, wild animals, every small creature, and every person who was not in that ark. That's no small detail. This is the whole point of the flood. This was not just a really bad storm that Noah's family happened to survive. This was judgment. God looked at the earth and saw how corrupt and violent it had become. And he decided to start over. And I think it's important that we don't rush past this part. Because if we do, we miss just how serious sin really is to God. But here's the thing I keep coming back to. In the middle of this judgment, God also made a way. He did not have to save anyone. He did not owe Noah a boat or a warning or 7 days to get everything loaded up, but he did do this anyway. That is grace showing up right in the middle of judgment. So when we read these verses about everything dying, I don't think we're supposed to just feel the weight of that and stop there. I think we're supposed to feel the weight of just how much it mattered that Noah and his family did not die with everyone else. Out of every person on the face of the earth, 8 were saved. Just 8. Because God made a way. And I think that says something about how God still works today. Judgment is real. Consequences are real. But grace is also real. And God is always looking for a way to save people who will trust him, even when the whole world around them is falling apart. I also want to go back to something we touched on earlier, because I don't think we gave it enough attention. We talked about not knowing what was happening outside the ark, but I think about the animals too. Every kind of animal, all matched in pairs, all living together on a boat for over 6 months. Predators and prey, side by side and safe. That is not something that just happens naturally. That is God holding it all together. He was not just keeping Noah and his family safe from the water. He was keeping the peace inside the ark too, animal by animal, day by day. If God can hold that much chaos together in a one wooden boat, I have to believe that he can hold it together for us. Whatever chaos is happening in our lives right now. This is the part of the episode where we look at what lessons and warnings we can take away from the verses we just went through. Today, I have 2 takeaways that I want to leave you with. God cares about our big and our small. The one thing I want us to really understand today is this. The same God who created the entire universe and everything in it is the same God who cares about your life. Everything you are going through, big or small. God made sure that Noah and his family and every single animal that was on the ark had everything they needed for a very long stay. Nothing was forgotten. Nothing ran out. Noah and his family were the ones on the ark, but God was the one keeping them safe. The same God who controls the weather, who controls a flood, is the same God who controlled the timeline of the pandemic. None of us saw coming. And he is the same God that can take care of whatever we need to. Noah did not know exactly how long they would be on the ark. Yes, God told him that it would rain for 40 days and 40 nights, but God did not tell him how long it would take for the floodwaters to recede. So he and his family could finally step out onto dry land again. And I can tell you, even though we did not know how long the pandemic would last, God took care of my children and me and you, and we made it through. He made sure we had everything we needed, and he still does this today. He wants to do the same for you, whether it's something as big as a worldwide pandemic or a flood that covers the whole earth, or just the everyday things that you and I struggle with. He wants us to choose to bring him into all of it, not just the big moments, but all of it. The second thing I want to leave you is with this. God's grace always shows up in the middle of judgment. Out of the whole earth, God saved 8 people. That's not a very big number, but it was enough for God to start over with. I think sometimes we look at our lives and we feel like we're the only ones still trying to do the right thing. Like everyone around us has given up or gone a different direction. And we're left standing there wondering if it even matters anymore. Noah probably felt that way too. He was the only one building a boat for a flood that no one else believed was coming. But God saw him. God saw his faithfulness in the middle of this chaotic world that had turned its back on him. And God made a way for Noah and his family, even though judgment fell all around them. So if you feel like you're the only one standing right now, I want to encourage you. God sees you too. He is not overlooking your faithfulness just because the world around you seems to be falling apart. He made a way for 8 people on a boat, and he can make the same way for you. Thank you for joining me for another episode of Exploring the Bible. On our next episode, we will be seeing the floodwaters begin to recede. If you enjoyed this episode, please hit the follow button so you never miss another one. Leave a review. I would love to keep this conversation going with you even after the episode is over. And if you know someone who would enjoy this kind of content, please share it with them so that they can listen to. And as always, God bless.